Kyle Arsenault, and today I just wanted to cover a quick concept that has allowed a ton of our athletes to get better training effect out of their lower body exercises. And that includes the hip hinge or deadlift, the squats, lunges, and step-ups. And really, the problem with these exercises that we see a lot of athletes run into is that a lot of our athletes are very quad dominant. So what does that have them do? That has them actually kind of go into the knees when they're trying to work these patterns, whether again it's a squat, it's a hip hinge, some kind of lunging pattern, or some kind of step-up pattern. So really what we like to do is have our athletes load the hip. So that's the concept I want to talk about a little bit nice and quick here, is actually loading the hip and what that means. So it's a little bit easier to see from the side here. So just say I was going into a squatting pattern. What a lot of athletes end up doing is keeping the chest really high and trying to sit into that squat. So they end up keeping the chest really high, the torso vertical to that ground, and they end up loading the quads. So right now I can feel my quads really firing off on me. You can even see some extension in my low back, which is not good, especially if we're loading this up at all, and then we like to come through. So what we've been having a lot of athletes do, and a lot of coaches will coach and cue, keep the knees back, which works, but you can still try to keep the knees back and keep that chest up vertical, which again kind of loads the spine versus loading the hip. So what we actually want to see our athletes do is get into a good kind of, what we cue is the shoulders over the knees. So as we're sitting into that squat, you actually want to think about bringing those shoulders over those knees. So you keep a neutral posture, keeping the core brace, the abs in, and sitting that hip back and into it. So a couple of cues that we use, try to think about reaching your butt back to the wall. So I'm trying to reach my butt back and keep my abs in at the same time. And again, that effectively loads the hip. So now I'm loading it, I can feel my glutes really starting to get the work in for me. The other cue that I like to use is imagine a belt around your waist, and I'm pulling you into that motion. So you're actually being pulled into the motion, whether it's our squat, our hip hinge, deadlift, our lunge. I'm being pulled in, not being too straight up. So again, a lot of athletes like to lunge with their torso nice and vertical. Again, loads up the quads a lot. Versus if I go into that forward pitch, I'm being pulled into that motion, hip is down, I actually look like I'm sprinting here, and I'm loading through. So I'm loading the hip, getting that forward pitch, and loading through. So really the big concept is try not to focus on being so upright in the upper torso, where we actually want to be a little bit loaded into that hip, so that forward pitch. So again, on any kind of squatting motion, we want to try to load the hips, so I'm pushing hips back, getting the glutes to do the work for me, and driving through. If I'm hip hinging or deadlifting, same concept, pushing the hips back, loading that hip, driving through. My lunge, same exact thing. So I'm pushing the hips back, a little bit of that forward pitch, driving through that glute. And same thing with step ups. If you can imagine a box, I'd be here, and instead of stepping up and driving tall, I would actually be forward pitched in, and then driving through that step up. So again, whenever we're trying to enhance the training capacity and the training effect of a lower body exercise, we really want our athletes loading the hip, sitting back into the hips versus sitting into our quads. And that's just by allowing a little bit of forward pitch, obviously not allowing our athletes to round forward or excessively arch, but we want to think about forward pitches in, just like we're about to jump, coming through. So try that out. That's going to allow you to load the hip, use the glutes, use the core the way we really want to, and that's going to help enhance performance and keep us healthy.